Last year, we took a look at the Subminimal Nanofoamer, and we're pretty darn impressed with how it allowed you to get genuine latte art quality milk without an espresso machine. However, there were two main caveats to that device, in that it still took a significant amount of technique to get it right, and the milk tended to cool off quite a bit during the texturing process. Even still, I was super impressed with that device, and Subminimal proved that it certainly knows a thing or two when it comes to texturing milk without a traditional steam arm, which is why I was super excited to check out their new, completely hands-free solution, the Nanofoamer Pro. On paper, it solves the shortcomings of the original Nanofoamer. It actively heats the milk, and it takes care of all the technique for you, regardless of milk type. But does it live up to these bold claims? Let's find out. Now, before we dive into how the Nanofoamer Pro works and my experience with it, a quick disclaimer. This unit was sent to me by Subminimal for the sake of this review. As always on this channel, that will have zero impact on the contents of this video or the opinions I express in it. If you do want to check out this device, I will of course have it linked down in the description below. Now, I am by no means a latte art pro, so for that reason I thought it would be quite fun to invite some far more qualified latte artists at a local latte art competition to experience at least the very first impressions of this device right along with me. So I headed down with the unopened box to Found Coffee in Guelph to do exactly that. Both the competitors and spectators were very interested in the promise of latte art quality milk without needing an espresso machine or weeks of practice to perfect technique. It was actually really fun filming this with sort of a live audience, so thank you once again to Found for letting me crash your latte art throwdown. We took the new Nanofoamer out of its box, and with only a few glances at the manual, we're up and running with our first attempt. Everyone was eager to get a try, so I'll just let you watch on our first few attempts and hear some real-time reactions from each of the competitors.
It's a little foamy.
A little foamy?
A little foamy. I think you need to fill it to the max though for it to 12 ounce.
What's the max? It's a little thick.
It just doesn't like integrate as well.
Okay, that texture is really nice.
It's definitely thinner.
Oh, that's okay.
That's good.
That's not bad. Look at that like nice texture too. Like it's very good.
More is better in this case.
Yeah.
Oh no. I feel like this is like more pressure. Oh, why do you get so quiet, guys?
Oh, too thin.
No, I think that would be more like latte flat white. Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So we've got a high, middle, low.
Imagine if we all did our pours with that texture.
This thing is getting put through its paces.
This is thin, but it should be all right. Oh, it's too thin.
Too thin.
Yeah, too thin. I got nothing.
Oh.
Which setting was that on?
That was on 2.
That was on 2.
Really?
So maybe a bit inconsistent.
Yeah, it's really like low temp.
Yeah.
This is so nice not having to fill my shots.
1, 2, 3.
All
We're
right.
gonna have to read the manual.
Oh, do you mind heating that up a little bit?
That's better.
Yeah, it's actually like perfect.
Yeah. So cool.
Just a little, not enough milk to cut through. It's not bad though.
Okay, but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice. Honestly, for just playing around with it,
That's fantastic.
those are some
for-
pretty good results.
yeah.
And for an automated thing,
Dude, that's
right?
nuts. Yeah, that's sick. I mean, you can like, if you have an AeroPress, you can make latte art at home.
Yeah, AirPress, a flare,
Flare, yeah.
Nanopresso. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna grab one of those.
There you go.
Frothy.
So, the initial impressions were promising, and the buzz from the audience proved there is certainly a market for a product like this, but let's dive into my experience over the last few months of living with it at home, and also take a look at how this thing actually works and why it took so darn long to design. There are 3 key parameters when it comes to steaming and texturing: introducing air into the milk, incorporating that air into the milk with a whirlpool, and of course heating the milk up to your desired drinking temperature. The Nanofoamer Pro attempts to take over responsibility for all three of these parameters, and you can actually hear it switching between programming at different phases of that process. Introducing air into the milk is handled by essentially the same propeller and screen system as on the original Nanofoamer. A motor in the base uses a magnet to spin the screen that is mounted on a fixed position by an axle attached to the lid. The whirlpool to incorporate the air is then created using one of 3 different flow guides that attaches magnetically to the inside of the pitcher. Each guide progressively introduces a more aggressive swirl, and choosing the right one will mostly depend just on which type of milk you are using. For standard dairy options, we're sticking with the most gentle black flow guide, but harder to texture milks such as soy or almond milk will definitely benefit from the more aggressive blue or even green setups. After that, you also need to pick a foam level from 1 to 5 on the front of the device. Now, I do find this combination of flow guides and texture numbers to be a little bit unintuitive. You'll definitely need some trial and error with your particular milk and preferences to get exactly the texture you're looking for, even with the very helpful step-by-step on the Subminimal website. It's not going to be something you pick up and immediately know which number to pick. And for me, this is what took up a good chunk of my first week using the Nanofoamer, trying to get that perfect texture by trying different combinations of milk volumes, setting numbers, as well as letting it run for longer and shorter. After all, the Nanofoamer doesn't have an exact temperature setting. It simply beeps and displays OK at 55 Celsius and then stops altogether at 65. To be completely transparent, after that first week, I already had a good chunk of this review written and with a significantly more negative overall tone because of this long trial and error process. I simply couldn't get consistent results, no matter how accurately I weighed out the milk, I positioned the fins, or stopped at the exact same temperature every time. Sometimes the milk would come out better than I could steam it by hand, and sometimes it was either too thick or too thin to pour any kind of defined shape. The same kind of slight inconsistencies we were seeing at the latte art throwdown. That was until I was browsing Reddit and a thread emphasized the importance of perfectly aligning the Nanofoamer lid. And sure enough, that was the trick. Because of how far away the mixer head and screen is from the lid, even a slight misalignment leads to a complete change of the fluid dynamics throughout the mixing process. I notice this instruction is at the very top of their online manual now, which does not surprise me at all. This really just stresses the importance of creating perfect mixing conditions to properly incorporate air, and why it takes so much practice to learn by hand, and also why the fully automatic Nanofoamer took so bloody long to design. When you steam by hand, you subconsciously make subtle adjustments to correct the flow. The Nanofoamer has to get it perfect and with a static setup. Once you get the consistency part figured out, the Nanofoamer Pro is very impressive. To be able to get this level of milk texture for flat whites, lattes, cappuccinos, or even higher amounts of foam if you want it, without needing an espresso machine, opens up a whole range of home and travel setup options. There are now very few arguments against buying a Flare 58, for example. Pair that up with the Nanofoamer Pro, and you can serve top quality lattes at a fraction of the cost of an equivalent espresso machine. Heading out on a trip? Pack a travel espresso maker like this Outen that we'll be looking at soon, and paired up with the Nanofoamer Pro, you are making more than acceptable lattes with a setup that needs one outlet and can fit in your backpack. It also has the ability to make cold foam drinks if that's something you want, using setting 0, which simply does 16 seconds of aeration with no heating whatsoever. It's also relatively fast at around 2 minutes to reach 60 degrees Celsius, so you can easily work out when in your routine to hit start so that your milk and espresso are ready at around the same time. Another big part of the user experience with really anything to do with heating milk is cleaning. Even an espresso machine steam arm needs to be immediately wiped and purged. The Nanofoamer Pro isn't difficult to clean, but it's also not the easiest. The heating plate at the bottom does consistently have some stuck-on areas, usually around the bottom of the flow guide where the milk slows down most. This is definitely not a unit you want to wait to clean. Rinsing immediately and then leaving a bit of water to soak the stuck-on bits worked well, but there were almost always stuck-on areas. Where it gets a little more difficult is when you want to make multiple drinks back to back. In photos or even in your hand, this thing looks much bigger than a standard pitcher, leading you to maybe believe that you could steam for multiple drinks at a time. In reality, the maximum capacity is 200 milliliters, meaning that if you want to make 2 drinks back to back, you need to rinse and then start over for each one. Overall, I'd say the Nanofoamer Pro lived up to my expectations. If you want a system that is going to give you much better milk quality than something like an espresso Aeroccino, more flexibility in using alternative milks, and the ability to do latte art without a full-size espresso machine, the Nanofoamer Pro does check those boxes. I think pairing this with a lever machine or a portable system like the Out-In is a pretty great value proposition. It's definitely not without its own set of quirks, such as that you need to play around with the flow guides and foam settings to find your ideal spot, you can only froth for one person at a time, and it is quite prone to stuck on milk. But right now, I also can't think of anything else on the market that truly gives it a run for its money. I do have a few yet to be released products coming in shortly that might be able to challenge it, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on those. But if you were looking right now in the market, I think the Nanofoamer Pro is a very safe buy in this category. Again, if you do want to check it out, I'll have it linked down in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and even consider subscribing if you want to see some more like it in the future. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.